now, as we see also, I mean, the one that this is probably the most important element, the session will be also recorded. So if anybody has any challenges with that, please refer to the Secretariat of ACA about potential issues. Next slide, please. As you see, we are on 2 different European locations, so we will do kind of in joint effort the presentation. Here is the overall agenda. So after the few welcoming and introductory elements, we'll go through the main findings and the methodology of the survey, and then we'll have a short slot of potential question and answers about the study. And afterwards, we would like to have some discussion with all of you about what maybe could be the next steps, or where do you see the future potentials for the more national involvement or more the national agencies involvement. Next. The session today, it will be presented by 2 associations. One is the ACA, Academic Cooperation Association, which is a membership-based organization dealing or working on the higher educational landscape. They bring together the national funding agencies from many countries, and also some associate members like IIE. And ACA as a network has a double mission. One is to act as a platform for members to learn and to exchange experiences, and the other also to work as a think tank on issues regarding the internationalization and innovation on higher education, and it's getting more and more prominent on the European landscape. And our counterpart is CMEPIUS, which is the national agency for Slovenia, the national agency for Erasmus Plus in Slovenia. So from ACA, the presentation will be done by Courtney and Lorenzo, and my name is Alenka Flander, and I'm the director of CMEPIUS. Next slide, please. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So maybe before we dig into the survey, just a short why the survey and how we kind of implement it, more on the managerial and implementation part. So why? When the initiative started across Europe, even though it was a centralized action, many of the countries provided somehow of, let's say, support or links to the alliances that were to the institutions that were members of the alliances within their countries. And this support grew through time, but also it's very varied. And what we wanted to do actually, it's to really look beyond the financial national support, also what kind of other national support is provided to the member institutions, also to map what the national agency on the national levels are doing to support the institutions participating in the alliances, and then also to kind of reflect what could be the potential further collaboration of the national agencies, and how we could build up maybe a better, let's say, supporting structure also on the more non-financial support provided to the institutions. How we started, the initiative was, the survey was triggered by CMEPIUS in cooperation with also some national agencies that we were gathered within this so-called MedNet regional network that we have, also linked with the LTA Spread AUE project, which is led by the DAAD, and also by then also fed in with the K3 project, which is a part of the policy experiment Future for Alliances project. So we try to really put different aspects within the one broader context. And the funding was done through the so-called TCA, which is that transnational cooperation between the national agencies that allows the national agencies to build also the capacity to support a program further through different aspects. The survey was implemented by and conducted by ACA colleagues, and it was overseen with also this external advisory board, which was composed by the directors from 5 national agencies. So from DAD, Indire in Italy, Norwegian National Agency, and from our side. And now I pass the floor to Courtney and Lorenzo to walk us through the study and provide what are the main findings and maybe interesting points. So.
Indeed, thank you very much for the introduction, Alenka, and thank you all for being here. I will guide you through the second part of this presentation. We will now look into the study. So we'll start with a brief overview of the background, methodology, and timeline. We'll then take a look at the sample of respondents. Since, as Alenka was mentioning, we have used surveys to gather our data, and then we'll look at the findings and hopefully have time for, well, we will have time for some discussion at the end. So next slide, please. So looking at the background, as Alenka was already anticipating, there's a rapidly growing body of research on the topic of the EUI, and within this body of research, the national dimension has gathered an increasing importance with studies that have analyzed national policies, co-funding mechanisms, and also regulatory changes that have stemmed as a result of the initiative. However, this dimension remains still comparatively underexplored, and this is why we have decided to take a deeper look into existing national level support mechanisms and their impact on the initiatives as a whole. So against this background, we decided to focus on support measures that are specifically offered by national funding agencies, including national agencies for Erasmus+. And we have shaped our methodology against these 4 objectives. First of all, we sought to understand the real needs of higher education institutions participating in the initiative, and as a consequence, the type of support they require from national level actors. Secondly, we sought to map the existing support activities offered by national level actors with a view to also identifying areas for closer cooperation, not only between alliances, but also between member institutions of the alliances and national agencies more broadly. And finally, we sought to explore opportunities to enhance this cooperation and to possibly link the work that's being carried out by different national agencies around Europe. So in order to carry out the study, we adopt a mixed method approach based on these 2 surveys that we have deployed, targeting higher education institutions first and staff from national agencies second. And then we also, at a later stage, organized focus groups. So starting from the survey, our target audience was concerning the higher education institutions, of course, institutional leadership, so rectors, vice rectors, but also heads of international relations office, and also, of course, staff that is working in alliances, both at leadership level, so secretary generals, but also more on the ground, so work package leaders and local alliance coordinators. Whereas for DNAs, we specifically targeted staff with documented experience supporting or overseeing the initiative. So the surveys were based on multiple choice questions and were structured around 3 main blocks, 3 main sections: background information, existing support activities, and planned or desired future support activities. Next, please. To validate the findings and the data gathered through the surveys, we then organize these 2 focus groups, one with staff from institutions, higher education institutions, and one with staff from national agencies. And the discussion during the focus group was structured around 3 main thematic sessions. First, we tried to discuss the strategic alignment of the respective institutions with the initiative as a whole. And then we looked into national and regional support mechanisms and opportunities for future collaboration. So we structured the focus group in such a way to mirror also the structure of our report. Next, please. Just a quick look at a timeline. The idea for the study was originally conceived at the end of 2024. But then the full rollout of our activities took place in 2025. So the questionnaires were originally drafted in February, and then they were reviewed and launched in March. Over the summer, we analyzed the data and managed to put together a first draft version of the report in September. As I mentioned before, in October, we organized these focus groups to validate the findings, and we came out with a final draft of the report around December, where we shared it with our advisory board and published it in January 2026, so just a few months ago. Okay, so before we look into the findings, just a brief description of the sample of our respondents. As I mentioned, we had 2 surveys, so let's start with the first one, the one that was targeting higher education institutions. We had quite a large number of respondents, more than 400 responses, coming from 251 unique higher education institutions that were spanning across 32 different countries and belong to 36 different alliances. This number represents, on average, 51% of all institutions participating in the initiative within each country, within each national reality, against a 30% representation threshold, which is what we originally accounted for. So we had a quite high representation. Looking at the geographical coverage, geographical representation of our respondents, as you can see on the right, we have a quite broad representation here as well, with France, Germany, and Spain being the 3 countries with the highest response rates. Next, please. Okay, so a large majority of our respondents are institutions which are currently receiving funds from the Commission for this initiative, 95%, with just a small batch of respondents, about 4%, representing Seal of Excellence alliances, the perspective of which was also included in the sample. And we have also a quite even representation of alliances across funding periods, as you can see from the graph on the right. About half of our respondents belong to what we could call first-generation alliances. So the alliances that were funded in the pilot phase in the years 2019 and 2020, and which have been active for more than 5 years now, whereas around half of the respondents belong to what we could call second-generation alliances. So those that were funded between 2022 and 2024. Finally, for this first survey, as I mentioned, we targeted different institutional roles within universities. About half of our respondents are working directly with alliances as coordinators or work package leaders. And then we have another 30% of respondents that are employed in institutional leadership roles, so vice rectors or heads of international relations office, also with different ranges of experiences in this field. Concerning our second survey, the one that was targeting staff from national agencies, here we had 33 responses that came from institutions across 28 different countries. As you can see from the chart, the majority of these institutions, the majority of these HEIs are national agencies for Erasmus+, almost 80%, with a smaller percentage representing other national funding agencies active in the field of higher education from countries such as Belgium, Poland, Slovakia, and so on. Interestingly, over half of the HEIs respondents reported that they have dedicated staff resources to oversee the activities related to the EUI. I say interestingly, of course, because the European Universities Initiative is a decentralized action. But however, most of HEIs that reported this also reported that they're currently employing up to one full-time equivalent to this matter, with a few we could say positive exceptions. For instance, Czechia, Greece, Poland, and Serbia are currently allocating 1 to 3 full-time equivalents, and Germany definitely stands out with 3 or more full-time equivalents already. Okay, so this was just to give you a brief overview and also to lay the background for this discussion. We will now moving to the findings in this order. We will first look at how the initiative is referenced in strategic documents at both national and institutional level, and then we will examine the existing forms of national support and where and how these national support measures can be enhanced and how collaboration can be enhanced in the future. Let's start with these references in strategic documents. Let's look first at the national level. Here we have a majority of respondents, so 50% of HEIs and 70% of higher education institutions reporting that the initiative, participation in the initiative is already included in their national higher education or internationalization strategy. However, the initiative is included in the strategies to different extents depending on different national contexts. Around 1/4 of respondents mentioned that it is included as a specific policy priority, whereas another 1/4 mentioned that it is only briefly referenced in these strategic documents. And also among respondents that mentioned that it is not included yet, a few respondents mentioned that there are plans to include it in following revisions of these strategies, whereas another 15% reported that there is no current intention to include it. Next slide, please. When we look at the institutional level, so the extent to which the initiative is embedded within institutional strategies, here again, we witness quite high institutional uptake, with 80% of respondents mentioning it is including it in their institutional strategy, and 71% reporting it is included in their internationalization strategies. So, however, there's a high uptake already. There's also room for further integration, specifically when we look at the embeddedness in the education and research strategy that sits around 38 and 37%. This is also due to the ongoing project-based nature of EU-level funding for the initiative that poses some constraints to more deeper integration into strategies of higher education institutions. Okay, so now we're moving to national support, so I think I can now pass the floor to Courtney for this part.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Yes, so the next part of the study actually focused on national support, as Lorenzo had mentioned. And within that, we wanted to look into what type of support was being provided by different national level actors. So you'll see as we move into the next slide, the different national actors that we've considered and the type of support that they've provided so far. So here we have the results from the national agencies and the results from the higher education institution respondents, but they are aligned in basically saying or demonstrating that the national ministries of education have been the predominant or considered the predominant national level actors supporting institutions and alliances. And that is through co-funding or financial support, which is in orange. Also, other types of support, which is in light blue. And dark blue represents both financial and other types of support. So there we can clearly see that the national ministries of education are the top actors supporting institutions. But second to that, we see clearly also that the National Agency for Erasmus Plus is very actively supporting institutions as well. Other actors we considered in this are national ministries of research and education, other national funding agencies, regional ministries of education and regional ministries of research and innovation, as well as the national quality assurance agencies. Going into or zeroing into the types of national support, we start first with support provided by the national or regional ministries. And here we can see that the predominant type of national support is co-funding for the Alliance members as part of a dedicated funding scheme. And both higher education institutions and national agencies are very much aligned on all of the different types of support by national ministries here. So the second most reported type of support is the sharing of experience or support in networking among institutions participating in the alliances. At the other end of the spectrum, we do see that national ministries, it has not been reported that they provide, for example, a digital space for the alliance members, or that they are providing funding for institutions as associated partners, or those in the Seal of Excellence, with the Seal of Excellence label. So the majority of the support is for those who are coordinators or full partners. Moving on, we asked both higher education institutions and national agencies, does your national agency support the institutions participating in the alliances? So does your national agency support? And interestingly, here we see that national agencies were very much aligned in stating that they do support their institutions in the alliances. However, at the institutional level, we see that we see much more variation here. 44% of respondents said that their national agencies were supporting institutions. However, 56% of respondents claimed that they either didn't know or that their national agency was not supporting their participation in the alliance. And we think that this could be due to different types of understandings of support. It could be that institutions assumed that meant financial support, which of course is outside of the scope of what the national agencies are there to provide. So we'll see more on that in the next slide, but we do attribute that to that reason. But considering national agencies as the second most supportive national actor, what type of support have they offered? Well, again, both national agencies and higher education institutions were aligned in saying that, or reporting that they are very actively supporting the sharing of experience and networking among institutions participating in the alliances. National agencies are also seen as those to provide guidance and advice on the Erasmus Plus participation modalities and rules, and also supporting the dissemination of good practices and outcomes towards institutions not yet involved in the European Universities Initiative. At the other end of the spectrum, we see less reported support concerning the partner search of being a part of an alliance, which is to be expected, and also the administration of national funding for associate partners or institutions with the Seal of Excellence. The last part of the study looked at the types of future collaboration and plans for future activities. And here we see that a resounding 78% of national agencies plan to continue or expand their support. So they want to continue what's being done and potentially upscale. 16% of national agencies reported that they do not foresee additional activities. That equals around 5 national agencies to be exact. So 5 national agencies don't plan on expanding their current support. In terms of emerging priorities for the national agencies, we see that countries such as Germany and Switzerland would like to advocate for more EU-level funding and, of course, complement that with national funding schemes, as we see funding and the sustainability of funding as a top priority. And we also observe that some countries, such as Croatia and Romania, would like to create more synergies with the already existing types of schemes within Erasmus Plus, specifically KA131. And just to recap everything from the report, we would like to showcase 8 takeaways with you. So to recap what Lorenzo, my colleague, presented in the first part and what I've just stated now, we see that obviously the European Universities Initiative is a key topic at both national and institutional levels. However, the full strategic anchoring is still to be seen. There's still scope for more strategic prioritization if desired. Also, we see that clearly ministries of education and national agencies for Erasmus Plus are the key players in offering their financial and non-financial support. Therefore, the national agencies provide a very distinctive form of support and an important form of support, which builds on their experience with Erasmus Plus modalities and combines their proximity to the institutions as well as the EU policy developments to offer more system level and national coordination. There's still scope, however, and a strategic need to strengthen the national agency's support for the European Universities Initiative and the alliances in the coming years, in order to further align with national priorities and to really achieve the full sort of systemic impact desired. Therefore, there's also the need to strengthen the national agency's support for the alliance through potentially a more clearly defined and recognized role at EU and national levels. And we also see that, just to repeat, that transsessional coordination activities would like to or aim to maximize the impact through upscaling existing successful initiatives. And there are a number of initiatives that exist that have been going on. One of them, for example, that Campus France is coordinating is the Future for Alliances, but there are a number of other supportive activities already in action. And there is a strategic need for coordinated monitoring and evaluation of the national impact. This is still to be seen, what form that could take shape. And the last takeaway would be that these sort of co-funding mechanisms require a stronger alignment of key actors, including and specifically the national agencies. So to read the full report, you have the QR code here. It's also on the ACA website. And I think now we transition to questions from the audience.
Yeah. Okay. So first, if there are questions or reactions to the survey itself, and I already see a hands up by Leslie. Go ahead.
Yes, hello, good morning to everybody. I'm Leslie Lulurek, Secretary General of the Emerge Alliance, so one of the newer. We were funded in 2024. So first of all, thank you very much for this very comprehensive presentation and all the data that you have based your conclusions on, and I totally agree. Just to give, and I'm sure that's, many other alliances will be in the same position. I think what would be needed as well is to focus on the differences between the different agencies. It's very, very different, as you know, from one country to another, both for national support, funding, financial support, and also for the national Erasmus agencies. And to have data on that would be extremely useful. For example, so we're an alliance of 9 partners, full partners from 8 countries. So you go from France, where the Ministry of Education has provided top-up funding. For the most recent alliances, it's 50% of the EU budget. For the first alliances 4 years ago, it was 100% of the EU budget. So you can imagine the huge amount of impact of that. And then within the same alliance, you would have we have a Greek partner that receives no additional financial support. So, it's great for the universities that do get national funding. I know for the French, we have 2 French universities, and they're traditionally on low budgets internally. So that extra support has made a huge help. But we have to balance that, as I said, with for example, our Greek partner that receives no extra funding. The same on Erasmus agencies. For example, we have a Slovakian partner. They receive a huge amount of money for organising blended intensive programmes. But to organise those, you need for your partners to be able to accompany their students and staff as well. And again, very different very different policies within the individual national agencies. So I think that needs to be looked at more closely with the alliances, because I'm just giving the example of one, but these huge discrepancies. It's not easy to manage, and you tend to have perhaps partners looking at others and saying, you've got extra money, we haven't, etc. So yeah, I'll stop there, but thank you very much. It's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Dominika, I see your hands up as well.
Yes, hello. My name is Dominika Guzik and I represent Erasmus Student Network. And my question will actually touch upon the topic of students. So the study highlights that there is national level support in many countries, but I wanted to ask how we can ensure that this support actually reaches to students on the ground, and how does it not remain primarily at the institutional level? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe also let me reflect maybe on both the comments, and then I invite also the others to, because we started in a way already discussion about what next could be done, or where we could join forces. First, I fully agree that it's very complex for alliances to work in this very different environments, and somewhere co-funded or not co-funded, and also the national legislative situations are different and so on. So I think maybe here it's also something that we could join voices, that we kind of support each other. That's why I think it's very good that we have this study to really show the landscape, how it is, because this is in a way, one is the alliances, but also if I reflect also from the side of the national agencies, we also have different mandates and different funds, how we could support the alliances themselves. So maybe then we come back to this, how much the alliances are, put in position within the national internalization strategies. How clear is there? Is there a mechanism how to support that? What is the concrete vision on the national level, how to use the alliances? But on the other hand, I also think that we need to be also honest and critical that the alliances should bring some kind of transformative elements to the regular work of the institutions. So we would need to really, take up the mirror and see whether we are the institutions are transforming or they're just doing business as usual. So I think on the long run, this should be objectively looked, and then we maybe, I mean, like in all things that start with projects, some are more advanced and some could, develop further, and some are maybe, end with the project ending. But reflecting on the student question, I think the funding, it's not always directly linked with mobility. I mean, it should aim to provide better, experience or support or study path of the student, but sometimes some funding is for, more directly for mobility, but some fundings are also to develop some novelties, some new methodologies, some new programs. And this is, so I think it's combination of, but the aim should be, of course, the student and his, the experience that he has at the end. Yeah. So I would not link it directly that funding, all the funding should go to the students, but the aim should be still to provide better aims there. Any other feedback on the first one? Okay, because otherwise I would really like to hear more views from you about what do you think if we put aside this, let's say, the funding, which is something that probably now it's very difficult for us to solve it, because we are not the national funding bodies. But do you see other modes that how the we as the national agencies or the national level could support institutions to be better partners in the alliances and to really help to develop the alliances themselves? I mean, is this something that we as let's say, national agencies should cooperate more to provide more similar support? Or is it like, do you see any, potential in kind of, for example, some countries we do monitoring of internationalization of our Erasmus HE holders, which is also partly addressing the alliance implementation. I mean, within these institutions, is this something that could help, the overall alliance with the feed in about the findings, or what are maybe the potential, opportunities, or I don't know, missing opportunities or added value? Or do you see that now we are discussing the new Erasmus charter, should be the alliance reference there as well? I mean, to institutions to reflect how they will use the, activities of the alliance within their Erasmus plans, Erasmus policy statements. What do you think? Oh, Rita, go ahead. Rita, can you hear me? Okay. We don't hear you, Rita.
Yes, can you hear?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So I will try to give my best shot because it's a very difficult question. And actually, what struck me in the study was really the difference between the expectations of the national agencies and actually what the universities expect. So kind of okay, we expect the money, but then the national agencies actually can deliver the knowledge. And I really think what the national agencies can deliver is the knowledge and the cooperation. One of the best examples I can think just by the head is actually the Portuguese National Agency organizes a nationally, like a kind of a gathering of the alliances. And I think this kind of practices can be something that are cost efficient and can be used more. For example, to join first generation alliances with second generation alliances for them to connect. It could be a good example. But for me, what I think could be very good for the future, for the national institutes to support better the alliances, is to support with this target, this mobility target that the alliances have, that is very, very difficult to achieve, in my opinion, impossible to achieve. But I think if there could be a way without money for this target to be better achieved in the future, for me, that would be already a very good step forward.
Thank you, Rita. Any other? Yeah, Iris, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I will try to address different questions of what you put here, but I can also not like pretend that I fully know everything in Utopia, at least. As for the instruments, I think there's a bit of the question, what's the goal, right? Because for the alliances, of course, for us, it would be great to have references. This also has a political implication towards rectors and departments and so on, that if there's a political pressure to use more of what they have for the alliances. On the other hand, this will also, as you might know, create probably frustrations that if suddenly the alliances are being pushed upwards, and it's not necessarily something that universities actually want. So from an alliance perspective, this could be useful, but then again, I don't even know if the members of alliances actually would want this. So I don't have a clear answer to this because of that. As for the monitoring, so I mean, for example, we have the agreements, we have monitored it. We just discussed it actually 2 weeks ago. What's the situation with the exchanges and what are the numbers and so on. And the big issue is that how you count mobilities differs so much between the institutions, not even countries, but really institutions, that it's actually quite hard to get these numbers. So yeah, I would say the question is not even how can we better monitor, but it needs to start with how do we even count the mobilities? Because if we don't have a common methodology how to do that, whatever you get as a result will be quite blurry, and you don't know the actual impact. Because there, for example, for us, there's some things that you can very clearly say this is an alliance-based mobility, but there's also mobilities that happen on a, let's say, lower level that we don't necessarily attribute to the alliance, but they nevertheless appear within the alliance. And then some count it as this, and others say, no, in our national counting system, we are not allowed to mark it this way. So they cannot count it officially as an alliance level mobility, right? So, I mean, the issues really start way sooner with the methodology rather than just the question of how to monitor. Because once you have the methodology, monitoring should be quite easy. It's not the methodology that's the issue from my perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask, what is your reflection on the being the alliance reference part of the Erasmus charter? Do you see it positive, or it doesn't matter, or do you think this would kind of help streamline maybe the both mechanisms? I'm not sure. I mean, this is really on brainstorming.
I don't know, to be honest, because like I don't think necessarily the issue is, I don't think it will directly have an effect in the sense of, oh, it's written there, so people will do something about it. Because the questions of why universities use mobilities from their contingent for the alliance or not is not necessarily connected to this. It might just elevate the basis for argumentation why it should be used more.
Okay. Thank you.
So because not all rectors necessarily see a reason why to put their mobilities into the alliance rather than to continue what they are doing. But yeah, I don't think that this is really where the core issue actually comes from, because we could see in our numbers there is a lot of mobilities. There's also mobility agreements. This is not, in a few cases this is an issue, but mostly the issue is not whether there's spots, it's more around very technical things. Do we have enough financing? Can we offer the support around it? Are our systems aligned enough to have the mobilities? And very basic level, the problem we have generally with Erasmus Plus are things being recognized. So yeah, I'm not sure. That's my answer about this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you also for your reflection about the methodology of counting, because this is something that indeed, I mean, it would be good to be kind of streamlined so we would know what actually we see in the numbers. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Aleš?
Hello, thank you very much. I hope this will work as my connection is a bit broken. I'm coming from the Alliance Transform for Europe and from the University of Primorska otherwise. So just a few thoughts on the last questions. So definitely what helps us already now, and I would like to see that also in the future, is that the funding allocation when we are asking for mobility funding is somehow reflected in, each year's decision by the national agency. For us, the alliance was a very big, for the whole alliance, not just for our university, a huge boost for mobilities overall, and we see a big increase in that. So luckily, our national agency recognized that and funding followed. But if it wouldn't, we would have a big issue with it. And we have a few partners that are struggling because we have the commitment on the alliance level, and we've all decided to dedicate mobility funding for the alliance activities. And if then the funding behind doesn't follow, it can be an issue. So for us, this is a big financing step. So apart from the experience sharing, and in this respect, we also wouldn't mind if that is reflected in the charter in the future. What could be an issue, and that's not for our university, but from the general discussions that we're having, especially from the student side and student organizations, is that they would like to avoid this double tier development that we already have. So if you put this into the charter, then you give even more emphasis on the universities that are considered more quality if they are part of the alliance, and you're creating the gap between the ones that are in the alliance and ones that are not. So of course, we as the university in the alliance will benefit from this, but from the student side, we know that there are some concerns on it. So, I just want to voice that as well. And the mobilities, what we see that the alliance cost is not just the number of mobilities, but they are actually getting embedded into the curricula of the students. And this is why I think it's important that the funding and the charter follow that as well, because it didn't just cause that the numbers are higher. Actually, the whole recognition processes are changing. It's part of their everyday activities, and that's the true benefit of the alliance that it's bringing here. So, yeah, definitely supporting that in the future as well. We also struggle with the counting issue or monitoring how we do it, and that's partly linked also to not just having the joint definitions, but also how we are actually exchanging data. And this is where we would like to see a bit more progress in the future from the European Commission side, and hopefully national agencies can push forward that the European student card through EVP actually get to the process where we expected it to be, so that we can, through the European router, actually exchange data. How we are currently seeing the issue, at least with our partners and specifically in the alliance, we are almost all already sending the ECCN and ECI numbers, but none of us are receiving the data. So we are sort of developing parallel structures to enable student data exchange. And we're also waiting for the European Commission to something happen. And now everybody is waiting for a technical solution that could actually support the whole mechanism behind that would also make it much easier to manage the in-person and online mobilities and student participation. So this is something we would like to see more progress in the future, and would really also, take a big administrative burden off our backs in the future if that actually gets through in the next financing period. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Aleš, for the feedback. Yeah, maybe the last part could be also a challenge. I think it could be foreseen that it will get better, because I think so far the challenge was also that there were two systems. One is the system of the executive agency, so one is the system of the European Commission, and then who sends which data. It was kind of more challenging, but as far as I know, the Commission now wants that all the data to be landed within the Commission system, which would mean maybe a better exchange, in between the beneficiary and the the commission and maybe also the national agencies. I'm not sure, but I mean this is maybe this would be the next. But thank you also for the other reflections. And also what works and what could not work maybe on your side. Okay, thanks. Mark.
Thanks, Alenka, and colleagues for the report and the introduction. And first of all, I think perhaps to introduce myself, I'm a policy officer in the higher education unit of DG EAC, and I'm myself coordinating the European Higher Education Sector Observatory therein. And first of all, I would like to welcome the report and the initiative of really bringing on board national agencies as an essential actor in making the European Universities Initiative to make it work. And I think it's an essential linchpin in a way between the institutions and the initiative as a whole. And I think it's really important to make the coordination at the national level amongst the institutions participating in the alliances, but also to spread the activities and the learning from the alliances to the whole higher education field within your countries and within your regions and among your stakeholders. So that's one thing. Another point is, also this report, you're collecting data and you highlight the issue of monitoring and reporting. And as you mentioned, and also Alice mentioned, there's a lot of synergies that could potentially be created. And that's also one of the objectives that the Higher Education Sector Observatory had and has of bringing together these many dimensions. This is still a relatively young initiative, so it's really taking shape. So we have now a number of first tools that are out there, such as the scoreboard, which is monitoring different policy dimensions at country level. And I think there's one or two indicators which, for example, relate to the participation in the European University Initiative, but that's something that could potentially be enhanced. And then I think the main strength is also the monitoring at the institutional level, where we have the benchmarking tool. Now, what we have in the pipeline as a next step is to really also see how we can target the strengths of the observatory towards monitoring the European Universities Initiative and how we can create synergies and also build on the other monitoring or the reporting tools and to have a better synergy between what is being reported for, let's say, for project purpose, for contractual reasons, for mobility reasons and so on, and also what we have within the observatory, which partly is based on statistical data through national statistical offices, partly also from institutional data through surveys. And we think that there we could create some gain from obtaining possibly information through an institutional survey with regard to the alliance activities. But this is still relatively novel idea somehow. So we've started discussion with internally and also with For You For All. We'll have discussions, I think, tomorrow already at the coordinators meeting and further. So this is something that we want to make progress on. At the same time, also something that we want to discuss with the community to see how and where we can create the good, let's say, the good balance. I think every time when you do surveys, you're asking for data. At the same time, you also need this type of data and evidence to ask for money for example, from policymakers also when we are having discussions about the next budget. What's the added value? Also to have some evidence on the table. But I think this is a debate that that we will have in the coming months likely years to set in place a good system between institutions, countries, national agencies, and to find kind of right constellations within this the growing ecosystem of European Universities Initiative. So yeah, that's a reflection from my side.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yeah. And I think it's very good to hear, and also I see it also in chat. I mean, that there are many efforts put in kind of, to bring together, the knowledge and expertise and how to build from that on, which is, I think, very good. But I also see in chat, I mean, one comment, and this is probably actually the reality, that it's more complex to address. I mean, the reality of implementation. So one is the strategy, but then it's all the within the institution and within the national system and within the alliances, the differences and how to then navigate through all of this. So I guess this is the day-to-day reality for the project managers, probably. Maybe as a last thought, I mean, because there are already some cooperation activities across the initiatives across the all alliances, as well as wider. Do you think it's like, if I got it right, I mean, that so the kind of support to network on the national level between alliances is something that you see as an added value? But I was wondering also, I mean, would it be probably good also to kind of have let's say, meetings on a national level between the national agencies, the alliances, and funding ministry somehow to debate what is the next steps, or, I mean, what are the challenges, or, I mean, this is also very complex, but still maybe we need to take all stakeholders in, together to openly discuss what could be the challenge, because I'm not sure. We'll try to, think it over across also the national agencies after all the findings and the feedback, what could be done next. But does anybody wants to share any final thoughts? Okay. Iris, yeah, I see your hand.
Yeah, not to let you hanging here. I think networking the alliances on national levels makes sense. I mean, I've been only in Utopia for half a year, but from what I can see is that, for example, you have a university from one country and they are saying this, and this is not possible. But then you know that in another alliances, a university from the same country was able to find a workaround. So, I think there's a value in having these national level networking. So you can learn from others from your country that there are workarounds for things that you think maybe it's not possible. And the other question, what was it again, the second part? On the ministries. I mean, I think this is something that is hard to answer without having discussed it with the alliances and directorates, because it's a very political question indeed, whether you want alliances to have their own connection to ministries on the funding. So I won't be able to speak on that.
Okay, yeah, sure. Martina, thank you.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to let you know that we will have our meeting with all the European University higher education institutions from Austria and the ministry in 2 weeks. So we have it frequently that we are coming together to speak about funding, success stories, challenges, and so on. So this time it's on the level really from the leaders of the European universities, but once a year we have also a meeting with all the rectors and, of course, again, the administrators, leaders of the European universities. So we are doing it at least twice a year.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's very nice to hear. And And I think Austria is also, because we are participating with your federal ministry within the Future for Alliance network. I think you're also good example that you have at the ministry level, one person responsible for the alliances on the national level, that I understood that she also brings, all of you together on some meetings. And so, I mean, the institutions to some meeting, which is, I think, also a very good approach on the national level. Yeah.
And perhaps if I may add another thing which was mentioned, the ÖAD is part of the LTA of Spread EUI. And of course, there our task is to present the higher education institutions who are not part of a European university, the results, the success stories, but of course also the challenges of European universities. So we like to bring together let's say, the higher education institutions who are not part of it, and that they have the chance to learn something and to decide if they like to share it or not. And we also made a study about why they are not participating or why they want to participate. So thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, this is also one of the very good initiatives, how to spill over the experiences of the alliance development also to those not participating, and how all the higher educational landscape could contribute. But this is a topic for another meeting, I would say. So at this point, I would like to thank you for your valuable contributions and also the views. And we also hope that the report that we prepared could help you also with your next, let's say, discussions, and especially to us, I mean, how we could better support your implementation and guide you through the European landscape if with some more support. Okay, thank you. And thank you to ACA colleagues for presentation, of course.